There are stories yet unheard, children hoping, elders waiting, people searching for a word that says we stand together, a promise lived from day to day. In our family, make things better, and Shelley chose a road of service all the way. For the young, for our mangaino, for the women standing strong, for those needing care and access, every voice must still belong. Shelley, Shelley, Shelley Vargas Calvo, a name Guam has come to know. Shelley, Shelley, Shelley Vargas Calvo, serving people, helping hope to grow. In our family, hand in hand, building bridges, taking a stand.
This is Shelley Calvo, and I approve this message.
One heart in service to Guam.
My parents, Ben Diaz and Teresita Bora Ada, founded Ada's Mortuary more than 50 years ago. They built a legacy of service, compassion, and respect. As one of 10 children, I watched them care for families during the hardest moments of their lives. They taught us that the people we served were never just customers. They were grieving families who needed someone to listen, care, and help them through one of life's hardest moments. My father carried those values into public service as a senator. He taught me that whether you are helping one family or serving an entire island, leadership begins with compassion. Those lessons have guided my life and public service. If I'm given the privilege to serve as your governor, they will continue to guide every decision I make. I humbly ask for your vote. I'm Tony Ada, and I approve this message.
Hafa day. You all know me. I've been your senator, former speaker, businesswoman, lawyer, educator, and I am a mother. And I've spent my working life fighting for truth and justice for the people of Guam. As your governor, I will continue to fight for your families, and I will deliver a government that you can trust. This is a critical time for Guam, and we need change now. Our families are struggling and cannot wait. Please vote for us this election to bring that change that Guam needs.
I'm Therese Terlahi.
And I'm Sabina Perez, and we approve this message.
Who is going to be the next governor of Guam? Will it be Tony Ada or will it be Therese Terlahi? These are the choices that the voters have left us, the voters of Guam, with at the general election of November 3, 2026, stemming from higher than previous turnout for a primary election. 40% of Guam voters, registered voters, went to the polls yesterday. I'm getting my days kind of confused here. Yesterday, August 1st, and chose Therese Terlahi as the Democratic nominee for governor and Tony Ada as the Republican nominee for governor. There's a precinct by precinct and also a village by village breakdown. And in the largest vote districts of this island, Dededo, Jigo, Mangilaw, both of those candidates won landslides against their opponents. And out of the 19 villages on the Republican side, Tony Ada won 17 of those villages, including opponent Frank Blas's hometown of Barragata. And on the Democrat side, Therese Terlahi won 10 villages, Josh Tenorio won 9 villages. The villages, it's kind of like it was almost a division of the island where Therese Terlahi won most of the northern villages, which of course have the larger voting populations, and Josh Tenorio won most of the southern villages, which have the smaller voting populations. And all throughout today, I have it's been quite a busy day in the land of politics. And different things that are moving from here to there. We will try. We were promised by the Ada Calvo team that should they win the primary election, that they would grant our request for interview on the issues of corruption and poverty. They were the only gubernatorial team that did not interview with us prior to the primary election. They promised that we would be their first interview following the primary election, and we'll follow up on that promise tomorrow. We're going to try to get Tony Ada and Therese Terlahi to interview by phone on our show tomorrow morning. And tomorrow morning, I think we're going to start the show at 7 a.m. because I have a bunch of things to do. and so hopefully we'll be able to speak with one, or it would be ideal if we'll be able to speak to both of the gubernatorial candidates. But tonight, what I want to bring to you is a conversation with someone who is best able to explain yesterday's election and everything that led up to it. When no matter what camp I've been in, whether it's a winning camp or a losing camp, and I'm talking about gubernatorial elections, there has always been this, especially when I've been a part of the losing camp, right? There has been this temptation, especially by the candidates themselves, and sometimes it's the surrogates, the people who are involved in the campaign committee, to when a poll by the University of Guam's Dr. Ron McNinch comes out to poo-poo the poll and to say, oh, McNinch is always wrong. But I'll tell you this, my friends, McNinch is almost always right. And McNinch's exit polls have never been wrong. The exit polls never, ever, ever been wrong. Maybe in points, but not in victor. McNinch's exit poll has always predicted the victor on every side. McNinch's tracking polls that he releases every now and then throughout the primary election and general election season have, in my experience, almost always been an accurate sample of that time and space. And so, considering that he has the best track record against any other pollster, and there have been many who have come and gone, including these stateside operations that the parties and the candidates pay tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars to conduct, I don't put much stock in those polls, and I normally wait for the McNinch poll. I gave you earlier today during the morning show my analysis as to what happened in the primary election, why Therese Terlahi won, why Josh Tenorio lost, how Frank Blas was the one who was affected by the rally remarks, the unfortunate rally remarks, why Tony Atta won. I gave you what my analysis was, but I also asked you this morning to just consider my analysis, maybe put it in one ear and out the other, but wait for Dr. Ron McNinch's analysis, because he is an actual political scientist, and he is best able to break this down for us. And I have to imagine, if any serious gubernatorial candidate and their team are watching, I would highly encourage you to listen to what it is that he has to say, because it would signal to you what it is that you need to do for the November election if you're listening very closely to his words. Because I'll tell you this, when I was in charge of Governor Eddie Calvo's message in 2010 and 2014, I listened to Dr. Ron McNinch. I didn't presume that I knew everything. I absolutely relied on the fact that he is a political scientist. And while he did not get involved in supporting one candidate or the other, the advice that he did provide was extremely helpful in helping to pave a message that led to victory in 2010 and again in 2014 by a landslide. On the other side of the commercial break, we'll have Dr. Ron McNinch on the line with us. Stick with us.
Over the course of this campaign, I've learned that the people of Guam don't expect their leaders to be perfect. They expect them to be honest, accountable, and above all, keep their word to the people they serve. Those are the values that have guided my leadership and embodied the Republican Party I want to help lead. I believe good leadership starts with getting the basics right. That means respecting taxpayer dollars, making responsible decisions, and holding ourselves accountable. When our government delivers the right way, we build stronger families, grow successful businesses, and create a brighter future for Guam. Because that's the kind of government you deserve, and that's the commitment the Atta Calvo team makes to you and your family. We will say what we mean, do what we say, and always keep our word to the people of Guam. I humbly ask for your vote. I'm Tony Atta, and I approve this message.
Hapaday, I'm Therese Terlahi. You know me, I'm your senator, former speaker, businesswoman, lawyer, educator, and I'm a mother. I've spent my working life fighting for truth and justice for the people of Guam, and as your governor, I will continue to fight for your families and deliver a government that Guam can trust.
Hafaday, I'm Sabina Perez, familia Gozo and Cabeza. I've utilized my diverse background as a medical technologist, diabetes researcher, community organizer, and Simon Sanchez teacher to craft data-driven solutions to long-standing issues. As your Lieutenant Governor, I intend to advance the beautification of our island and to not return federal funds that support our families. We are running to deliver urgent relief to families who are struggling on Guam from the high cost of living and to improve the quality of life.
We assure you that your interests, not special interests, will be prioritized, that corruption will be replaced with honesty, true transparency, and a willingness to listen to our community.
Please vote Terlahi Paris for Governor, Lieutenant Governor of Guam.
A vote for us is a vote for Guam.
I am Therese Terlahi.
And I'm Sabina Perez, and we approve this message.
Transportation, tourism, customs, utilities, and federal and foreign affairs touch every family, every business, every day. Jesse Michael Anderson Lujan believes Guam can be greater together by fighting for cabotage exemption, expanding the Philippine visa waiver program, and opening new doors for tourism investment and opportunity. Vote Jesse Lujan. Leadership you can see. Accountability you can trust.
I'm Jesse Michael Anderson Lujan, and I approve this message.
This past year, we've been focused on moving Guam forward, strengthening oversight in our schools, supporting our veterans, standing up for students and families, and working on policies that open doors for our people. For me, public service has never been about headlines. It's about showing up, listening carefully, and doing the work that matters. There's still more to accomplish, and I'm ready to keep pushing ahead. I'm Senator Vince Borja, and I humbly ask for your continued support.
Welcome back to the show. It's 7:51 p.m. on Sunday, August 2, 2026. This is the evening show on Kandit News. This is the Troy Torres Show, and my name is Troy Torres. And joining us, guest on the phone, is my old friend, my old professor, Dr. Ron McNinch. Doc, good evening.
Hey, Hafaday, Troy. Good evening, Troy, and Hafaday Kandit listeners. It's wonderful to talk to you.
Thank you so much, Doc. You know, let's start with every single election. You have both two types of polls, right? You've got your tracking poll, or the polls that you release sometime, during the primary season and during the general season. Then you have the other poll, which is the exit poll. And every time you release one of those, you get into all of this trouble because people who don't like the results tend to say things like, "Oh, McNinch is always wrong." And I always tell people, especially the political people who tell me those things, I'm like, I'm sorry to tell you, but McNinch is always right.
Right. Well, sometimes I think what happens, Cousin Troy, is that people will mix up my polls with other people's polls. But actually, if they go back and they look at the poll that they're talking about, they'll see very clearly we were generally right on target within a very small number of points, or within a very small range of points. And I'll tell you, my students really take these polls seriously, and they learn a lot from them. They learn how to do statistics. They learn how to talk to people. They learn how to listen to people. Yeah. And I think that if we're going to talk about the secrets of politics tonight, my strongest secret to share with any politician or even public leader, you don't have to be elected to office to be a community leader. That is just simply listen to people. Listen to people and be patient when you listen to others. Don't assume you automatically understand what they're saying. Yeah. Because often, people put confirmation bias. That is to say, they put their own spin on the things that others are saying. And that's a very, in this modern age of social media, that's a key limitation for many elected folks that are in our community. Simply listening to people. And, I remember a few years ago, and you publicized it, I stood up and said, no boys and girls sports. And I said it very plainly, and I took a stand, and you actually helped our community by helping to get that issue discussed. No other media group was doing that. But what happens is when you when you raise discussions that people then can engage in, and we can listen to each other and hear each other on our opinions, is so dang important. So that's just a little quick point.
Doc, when the exit poll came out last night, even I was in disbelief about it. I mean, I believed it because you were always right? But I was in disbelief because of what it showed. And it was a surprise, I think, for anyone who's been involved in politics, because I think that there was a general expectation that the incumbent was going to win the primary, that Josh and Tina were going to win the primary. And the exit poll came out and it said Therese Terlahi was going to win the primary. Doc, what happened in the election?
It all boils down to that ancient saw in elected politics. You run unopposed or you run scared.
Can you explain that?
If you're, whether you're an incumbent or whether you're a new person running for office, if you're running against someone else, it's like you're in a boxing ring. It's like you're on a wrestling mat. You need to be scared because you can get beat. And Machiavelli, the famous Italian philosopher, way back when, who wrote The Prince, said that it is better to be feared, or he actually said it's safer to be feared than loved. And what he meant by that is fear causes people to absolutely take the actions that are necessary to do what it takes to get things done. And quite often when politicians take for granted the public, take for granted the voices that are in our community, or they think that, well, I'm in office and incumbents always get reelected, right? That happens. And we've seen, I've been here 30 years, Troy, and I have seen 3 speakers of the Guam legislature lose their seats as speaker. Don Parkinson, Ben Pangilinan, and I believe Speaker Wampat. They all lost their positions while they're in the legislature. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's the top of that branch. And I'll tell you, there's no insurance other than simply humbly serving the community, humbly serving the public in a meaningful way. We are lucky in public service, and you know this because you actually were in the trenches of the executive branch, the real trench work. It's lucky for an executive or even a legislator to make 30% of the people happy, much less 50 or 60%. And people love you one day and they hate you the next day. Yeah. And then they forget about all of the things that you've done for them. And it's just an incredibly daunting process for people to remain in the public's good graces, even though you only have a fraction of them at any time. And so what happens often is, in my view, especially now in the social media age, many of our leaders have stopped listening to the public. And even worse, when they get elected to office, when they get into the legislature, they become kind of entrapped by their staff. And so then they stop listening to the public and they only start listening to their staffers. And I playfully call this the mushroom effect. They get fed on crap and kept in the dark all the time. And that happened, I think, in this election, to be blunt.
Interesting. So do you would it be that Josh Tenorio did not adequately address the concerns of voters that they had about corruption, public trust, authenticity?
Well, a couple of things. We interpret our reality, and this is a bit of philosophy, but it's good philosophy. Language helps us to interpret reality. That is, the words that we have in our vocabulary, the way that we describe things, helps to form the way we think, okay? That's a very, very old concept. We call it the Whorfian hypothesis. That is, our reality is based upon our words.
Okay.
The problem, I believe, in Josh's case, is those words were coming from off-island consultants who had no idea what was going on Guam.
And, so,
right.
Oh, go ahead, sir. Sorry.
And so listening, it's like listening to somebody who doesn't understand anything. And they're telling you, you got to do this, or you got to do that, or this is important, or that is important. Why? Because I'm an expert. You can listen to me. I have a track record. See, look at my record, and you can follow it, and it's a formula to success. Well, guess what? If that person doesn't genuinely understand our community and how different and special it is, if they don't understand, we live on a small island. Troy, you've known me for almost 30 years. You've known me since at least 2000, the year 2000. Mm-hmm. It's a long time. Mm-hmm. And ready for this? Try that in the mainland. Try to find people who've known others very actively and closely for that period of time. The social ties here are very, very different than they are in the U.S. mainland. You have to be very careful about burning bridges here. There's an old saying, the toes you step on today might be attached to the ass you might have to kiss tomorrow.
The burning bridges theory. You think so? Okay, I'm following, and I hope the politicians or those who are running for something are listening to this very important message from Dr. McNinch about burning bridges. I think this is a very important point that you're making, and in relation to the Josh Tenorio campaign.
Well, and I have to say, I've known Josh for many, many years. I knew Josh when he was working with Governor Gutierrez. He always was in my context of my relations with him, always positive, constructive, looking for solutions and things like that. Often, though, what happens when people get into these elite positions, they get surrounded by an armor of people who basically make them detached, unfortunately.
So does this explain why, because you look at it, right? His campaign did everything right that you would think a traditional campaign should do. They had the pocket meetings. They grew a large village organization. They were the incumbents and had access to all of that money. There was hiring going around everywhere, pay raises galore, the use of hundreds of millions of dollars in local and federal funds for, that benefited different people who were pleased with the administration. They spent, or they outraised and outspent everybody, especially Therese Terlahi, who had almost nothing, right? They were superior with their signs, with their advertising. Their messaging was on point in terms of what it is that you expect a gubernatorial candidate to talk about. And they still couldn't make it.
Sure. And in fact, I have to say, this is very well documented in governing literature, which is the literature of how government works. It's a very, very old set of concepts, actually. It's not just in the Guam. Everyone says, oh, you're a lieutenant governor, it's hard to get elected governor. It really is. Why? Because at the fundamental level, citizenry want change. And so if you're the lieutenant governor of a sitting governor, especially one for 8 years, and then you want to come right in a succession, and being a successive candidate for governor, people do not perceive that you're going to be a change agent to the level that a new person would be that change agent. And so, and by the way, in order to make change, and this is the yin and yang of government, believe it or not, it's the give and take between change and conflict. Whenever you try to change things, you're going to create conflict. And whenever you create conflict, you create change. It's literally the yin and yang of government. And unfortunately, if you are the go-to loyal lieutenant of a person on the way out, it's disloyal to engage in that kind of conflict. It's perceived as disloyal by some to try to engage in change efforts. And so that becomes a trap in a way. And unless that person is willing to totally divorce themselves from the person that they were loyal to as a lieutenant for those many years. And that's the dilemma. That's the kind of trap that successive candidates get into.
Doc, did this election signal a change for the very first time in the formula for a gubernatorial team to win a primary election? Specifically, is this the new age of social media?
Actually, this is an old game, a very, very old game.
Interesting. Can you explain that?
Sure. You know, alls we are, Cousin Troy, are cavemen and cavewomen with smartphones.
Okay.
Our technology has changed, but people are the same.
Okay.
And so we see all kinds of first to worst scenarios. Everybody loves a good Cinderella story. The key to Therese is in classic fairy tales. It's a Cinderella story. Think about it.
Okay.
You don't have anything. You're an underdog. Everyone thinks that it's not going to happen, and it happens. And people get mad when I say this, but there's a lot of similarity between Therese Terlaje and Sabina Perez and Donald Trump 2016 and Donald Trump 2024.
Very interesting. But you know what? I see your point. It's anti-establishment.
It is the wave of change that people desire. And, you know, people have a love-hate relationship with change. And in fact, there's 4 variables of change we love to talk about, and depth, direction, speed, and method. And because you're always going to make people upset when you try to create change, even though people want change. And so how we navigate and portray the changes that we're going to make, or whether we're going to change things at all, or whether we're going to go back in time. Let's go back to the good old days, which is a form of change. Some people want it, others don't. And that's a constant give and take in all areas of governance. And people want stability. People want their kids to be safe. You know, I study education because I'm on the education board. What do parents really want? Actually, at the most fundamental level, it's not education. They want their kids to be safe. They want their kids to not be bullied. They want their kids to be able to, of course, learn. Learning's a given. But when we talk to parents about education and we listen to them, they want to make sure that their child is given all of the potential possibilities without having all these pressures. You know, young people today are being bullied in ways because of this technology that everybody has. They're being bullied in ways that are unimaginable when we were children.
Yeah.
It's incredible. And, you know,
sad.
If anybody wants to read about this, just Google U.S. Congress hearings on social media and young girls, and how smartphones and smart devices have really negatively impacted young girls mainly between the ages of 12 to 15. It's incredible. And you know what? No politician's talking about that.
Yeah.
And, you know, and that's the question. What are the politicians talking about? What are they making promises about? You know, nobody believes in promises anymore because we've been lied to so much by so many.
I happen to think that that's a big factor in this election, that there's an authenticity factor, much like what you were saying about, you know, the comparisons between Therese Terlaje and Donald Trump, is that there is just a great number of people who look at her and they they see someone authentic.
And there's a point of disbelief among some saying she could never get elected, right? And then you ever watch Britain's Got Talent, where Susan Boyle walks up?
Yeah,
right?
One of my favorite scenes on TV ever.
Right.
Yeah.
So also Therese and Sabine are the political equivalent of that.
Yeah.
That is, they walk up with nobody has any expectations of them.
I completely agree with you. So there are people who are making their bets about the November election, and I'm telling them, I'm like, you know what? I don't think I don't think you can prognosticate like this is before. There isn't a set of rules for this one. Let me ask you, Doc, what role, if any, did the rally remarks, the scandalous rally remarks, have on the primary election on both? Start with the Democrat side, and then if you have any idea if it made a difference on the Republican side as well.
Sure. Well, really quickly related to that, do you remember earlier, a couple of months ago, we came out with a poll, well before, right after the declaration points and things like right around the declaration.
It was the only poll that I trusted.
And everyone told me I was crazy and what am I smoking? That's what I was asked all the time. Because everybody said there's no way in hell that Therese Terlaje has any numbers at all. Right?
Yeah.
And I was told, well, our professional pollsters who are actually very well paid and very well educated, they say that everything you've said is exactly opposite of anything even close to reality. Really? This is how people talk to me, Troy. I'm serious.
Doc, it's at their peril. I tell people this all the time. All right. If you don't believe him at your own peril. Don't believe Dr. McNinch at your own peril. I'm just telling you right now, the guy's almost always right. And the exit poll has never been wrong in predicting a victor.
Well, I have to say we always have to be mindful. One day it may be wrong, Troy, and I need to say I've just been lucky so far, I guess, right?
Yeah.
But one key thing is we do a specific methodology with the exit poll, and also we do specific methodologies with our tracking polls and public opinion polls. We don't do one poll. We do bunches and bunches and bunches of polls. We do them on a weekly basis, 3 times a week. We have small samples.
Yes.
That's what a tracking poll is it gives you the ups and downs.
And you do measurements of aggregations and weights and all that different math stuff, right?
Yeah, but it's actually a little bit of it too, is paying attention to what's going on and what's going to affect people's opinions. In 2010, you called me. I think you're a little bit mad at me when you're running with the Calvo campaign. Yeah. And I had just done a speech, and actually you can see it on YouTube now. Clint Rogel did the article for his, I forget which news group he was working for, but it was like a week before the 2010 election. And in our tracking polls, it was Gutierrez was up a point, and then a couple of days later they were even.
And then race.
Right. It was back and forth every single time. And everybody laughed at me because everyone said, don't you know Cal was going to win by 10 points? Ha, ha, ha.
And
no, that's not
we
right.
won by the skin of our teeth.
Right. And and I'm happy for everyone who wins like that, especially.
McNinch was right again.
But everybody laughed at me, Troy, literally. And even in that room, it was at a Rotary Club meeting. Everybody laughed at me. And what we found out, and this is the point I wanted to share with you, what we found out in that election cycle was just the power of weekend talk. That is, people were having opinions at work, and then after work, they go home on the weekends, and who do they talk to? Family.
Yes.
Who matters more in terms of pushing political opinion? Is it coworkers and peers, or is it family members?
It's going to be family, yeah.
And so by the time the weekend's over, you roll into Monday, Tuesday, you still have the family effect.
Yes, especially if there's a holiday on Monday, depending on what day of the election happens. I mean, depending on the date of the election, yeah.
Right, that's the long trick-or-treat weekend thing we have to deal with all the time here.
Yes. And that's happening in the upcoming election. It's going to be
Yeah.
a fourth
Right.
weekend. Yeah.
Right. All Saints, All Souls Day, All Saints Day, Halloween. And you know what? Halloween's an adult party holiday. And so people and also people tend to drink more on those kinds of holidays.
And they'll talk more.
And they'll talk more. There's a saying in Latin, in vino veritas, which is in wine there is truth. Right.
I love it.
So, right. And so you end up having all these dynamics happen. And, one other thing, we live in and I just want to say this, I have to say this. We live in a beautiful community here. We take it for granted how beautiful the people are inside and out on Guam. 100%. And we're so nice to each other. And we don't disagree with our friends even when we feel they're wrong, because we're so dang polite, unless we really have that old kind of relationship where we can really let it all hang out.
Yeah.
A lot of times we don't. We're very, very reserved, and we don't want to embarrass anyone. We don't want to make fun of anybody. And, and I have to say, I noticed this even with my own daughter. She had friends now that she knew back in pre-daycare. I mean, like at 2 years old, same people. And nobody in America has relationships like that. Almost everybody, your relationship's based in a cycle of usually 12 to 22 months. Our relationships are just that dynamic often, but not on Guam. And that's one key thing. When people try to evaluate our opinions here from afar, or, Charles Darwin studied islands because islands are like little laboratories. And I have to say, from a standpoint of politics, you can learn so much about politics and social behavior on a small island like Guam. And if you just start looking for it, I say this to people all the time, and I tell my students this all the time. Get a physical paper calendar and use it to keep track of your days, because our weather here is the same temperature every day. It feels like the same day every day. So perceptually, time seems to just fly by. It's almost like Groundhog Day. It's the same day every day. And you look back and what happened to that 5 years I just lost? Is 2026 already? I feel like it's 2017.
Doc, how does that perception of time, and along with how unique our relationships are here, and the fact that the rally remarks happened on a weekend that led into the week of the primary election, how did all that factor into the outcome of the election, relating to the rally remark?
Right. And so what happens is there's a couple of things. And this always happens with opinion response. Opinion response is just how the bell rings, so to speak, when we talk about opinion effect. So you can ring a bell. Is it a loud ring, or is it a resonant ring? That is, it hums.
Okay.
So imagine when you hit a bell, ding, it rings, or you hit it and you can continue to hear it.
Yes.
Even a minute later. That's what that point was about. It wasn't just a ding kind of thing. It was something that went back and forth, and that kind of took on a life of its own, so to speak. It resonated in a way that few kinds of questions could. And unfortunately, sometimes in our modern age, people are unaware of things because there's a point of disbelief that people have that things matter when they actually matter.
Yes.
Why? Because we listen to social media too much, and we don't listen to people. And unfortunately, listening to people is the key.
Who on the Republican side, or did any of the teams on the Republican side, were any of the teams adversely affected by that scandal? As in, did people who would have voted for Frank Blas went and they voted for Therese Terlahi instead because of this scandal? or vice or Tony Ada, or
I have my own theories and perceptions of things. I believe in something I call lock-in choices. Okay. So here's what happens with lock-in choices. We don't really have political primaries here. We really don't. Okay. Primary elections are supposed to allow a political party to select their top person for that particular race. Unfortunately, we don't really have that here because we don't control who can vote in political parties. And so what happens is when a average voter looks at the ticket, and when I say ticket, they look at all parties and all elections, that is the Democrat and the Republican election, they lock in on one person that they really care about.
Yeah.
So whether it's delegate or governor or assorted senators or whatever, that's who they lock in on. And then because they're restricted only to that column, then they align their opinions with that particular set of choices. And so it's kind of like you stick your toe in the water and then you go all in, so to speak.
Yeah. And does that carry into the general election?
Yes, to a degree, because what happens at the general election is people can use the whole ballot. And so voter behavior, and it's something we've studied for years and years and years. Talk about how boring my life is, Cousin Troy. Okay, I study this kind of stuff like crazy. I look at political meetings, and you see a political meeting. No, I look at who kisses who and who doesn't kiss who. That's the kinds of stuff I look at. Who shakes whose hand? Who's giving who the cold shoulder? And I actually play games with it in terms of gaming some of these points, and I kind of make fun of it a little bit in my own way with my students, and I show them how to look for these things, because it's almost like watching kids in a kindergarten at some of these public events in terms of how people get along or don't get along. When people pick up the ballot on election day, the general election, first they go often and they look at most of the time they will put who they want for the delegate to Congress or the governor, depending on the kind of year it is. Once they've set that, then they go down the list of senators, and on average,
that's what I do. Yeah.
Our voters only use about 10 or 11 of their 15 votes.
I use fewer normally. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we do first pass, second pass, third pass. So here's how it works. First pass, you pick your top 1, 2, 3 that you really, really like. Because we vote at large, we do not have legislative districts here. And in fact, if we had legislative districts, I think we have 6 open slots that we do not use. We have 15 senators, we could have 21. If we use those 6 open slots, we could have geographic districts, which would then increase the numbers of Filipinos who get elected, which are always underrepresented in our elections, to be frank.
And Chukis are underrepresented.
Exactly. Where are these folks? They can't get themselves elected at large. They could get themselves elected within a geographic district, but we don't use geographic districts, even though we probably could. We experimented with them in the late 70s and early 80s, and then a court case shut them down. But we need to probably, from a political standpoint, revisit legislative districts simply to allow groups to have larger voices. The other thing that we should do in terms of returning to 21, when we had 21 senators, we had a wide variety of opinions. Not everybody was in the center all the time.
And corruption was a little harder to do.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So first pass, second pass, third pass. When people mark their ballot for legislature, they go down the first pass, mark their top 2 or 3. Then they go through a second pass and actually read the names because they're not familiar with them. And then the third pass is they just go through and they make absolutely sure that they're not missing anybody. And, I'm running for the school board, okay? And as a joke, I was going to they let you have your own campaign, almost like slogan on your campaign. And so I was looking at who had what, and I noticed malfunction uses malfunction, and I was tempted to write in malfunction's daddy, just because politics is so funny. And when you are playful in politics, people get it better. Why was Ronald Reagan such a great politician in the 80s? He could tell a good joke. Carter was humorless. He couldn't handle jokes. Gerald Ford was humorless. He couldn't handle jokes. Bill Clinton could handle jokes.
Yeah.
George H.W. Bush could not handle jokes. So that's the key thing is we are looking for, in this modern age, politicians that can tell a joke and be a little self-deprecating, make fun of themselves a little bit. And one of my friends said to me the other day, "Hey, Dr. McNinch, why don't you run for the legislature?" I said, "Because I wouldn't stoop that low." But I said, I'm on the school board, so that's even lower, right? And so being playful, people enjoy that as long as they know you're not being mean about it. And also being able to tell a good joke. I mentioned this in my article last week. I was in the supermarket last week, and this 70-year-old man bought a bottle of wine, and they made him show his ID to show that he was 21.
Oh yes, I read that. Yeah, that was ridiculous.
Ridiculous, right? Yeah, and they copy these policies from the U.S. mainland.
Yeah.
That's
ridiculous. There's a certain number of wrinkles that you have on your face where it's just, it's a foregone conclusion.
And here's another thing I noticed. Do you remember during COVID, they encouraged old people to go to the I'm talking about the elderly because they had comorbidities and they weren't supposed to go out and stuff like that. They encouraged them to go to the supermarkets before 8 o'clock or something. Now I forget the number. And I started hearing back, well, I don't want to go to the store before 8 o'clock. Well, why not? Because they can't buy a 6-pack of beer. Yeah. Because they only sell beer after 9 o'clock. Why do they only sell beer after 9 o'clock? So children don't buy it.
Well, just don't sell it to children.
Right. Right.
Doc, there's a great question by Anthony Diaz-Taylor. He asks, would endorsements from those who didn't make it change the outcome of the general election?
Right. We can choose our friends. We can't choose our family. Mm-hmm. And sometimes endorsements don't help.
Okay. I agree. Yeah.
I mean, who wants to be endorsed? In fact, it's so funny. Years ago, I was working on a grant. I needed a senator to sign off on it with the federal government because they had to guarantee a very, very small amount to get us millions, like $2 million. And the senator did not want to sign it because the guy that I was working on had bullied him in high school 30 years before.
Yikes. Okay.
People hold long grudges here. And so when somebody endorses you, no telling who has that secret grudge against them.
Yeah.
And you don't know, and sometimes even that person doesn't know.
Yeah.
Just how much that grudge can mean. And then the other thing is you ever notice when people are endorsing, they don't look real. They look like they're almost like mannequins talking or something.
Yes, it's very irritating. Yes.
And who wants, if somebody is going to endorse me, they better be having fun. They better show.
It better be from the heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they better show that they're enjoying life.
Yeah.
I asked a very famous question many years ago when Carl Gutierrez was running against Robert Underwood. I asked this question. This is for the primary, the same time that we were talking about these other elections. It was probably the 2006 election. I asked this question. I said, who would you rather go on a fishing trip with? Robert Underwood or Carl Gutierrez?
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of question actually can tell you a lot.
Yeah.
Because we actually want to hang out with people we feel are going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Human nature.
Right. We don't want to, and by the way, I have to say, also at the university, they had a little thinking experiment. And they told all these professors, imagine you're on a small boat out in the ocean, looking toward the future to come to our small island here. And I raised my hand. I'm like, have any of you people actually ever been on a small boat? I used to work for a yacht club. Try being on a 20-foot boat with 10 other people. After about 2 or 3 hours, you're going to start wanting to throw somebody off. There's a huge difference between rhetoric and reality.
Does the average voter see that, Doc?
Yes.
The average voter
people are a lot smarter than politics. People know when the politicians are lying to them.
I agree.
And
they firmly agree.
And they know when politicians are telling them stuff to just placate them and make them feel good, whatever. And I got to tell you, and I say this to everybody, and I'll say it over and over and over again. If you're running for office, it's important for you to in a nice way, ask people to vote for you.
Yeah.
Hey, I need your vote. Can you help me get elected? I only need one of your 15 votes. And that one vote's going to help me a lot. And here's the key thing nobody ever looks into, Troy. If you go back and you look at legislative races for the last 3 or 4 or 5 cycles, some people have like 3,000 or 4,000 votes above everybody else next to anybody else kind of thing. There are bullet votes.
Yeah.
And what that does is it kills that person's party. And I encourage people to revisit their bullet voting behavior where they're only, voting 1 or 2, because actually it hurt, because that person alone in a group of 15 can't get much done. They have to have sufficient peers to help them carry through legislation. And so I always encourage people to, especially if candidates encourage others to bullet vote for them, know that they're hurting their ability to get work done and everything. And but I have to say, we are going to have a very unique and interesting election season for the next 2 months.
Yes. What's gonna happen, Doc? And what is the formula aside from getting the most votes? What's the formula for the governor candidate to win?
You have to talk.
Okay.
You have to talk. So there's a technical word, and I don't mean to use technical words, but it's a very important word. The word persuasion, right?
Okay.
Well, there's a term in politics or in government we call moral suasion.
Okay.
And so what happens is when politicians debate and they argue and they critique the ideas of others, in a debate format or even a discussion format.
Yeah.
It's so important. It's very, very important. In the public, whether they want to admit it or not, they'll watch it. They want to hear it because they don't actually know these people. They only know, and by the way, the image and can I tell you, if a person, and I need to give a little political advice, if I may.
Yes,
Cousin Troy.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know what vendor they're getting their campaign signs from, but after a week or 2, if your poster is bleached and makes you look like Casper the Ghost or something, you might want to like change the people you're buying posters from, or have them kind of tinted a little bit more.
They're using them. I know what's happening. They're using a cheap red because the reds they bleach faster than the other colors.
Right, and it's really making unappealing campaign signs.
And it affects how your face looks too, because there's reds in your face.
Right. And you know what? I have to say, we studied this. If a person puts their face on a poster, or just simply puts their name on the poster, and their name's done appropriately, their name is better than the picture. Because the people are voting for the name, they're not voting for the picture.
Yeah.
And so that's another little point I thought I'd just mention. If people and people make the connection with the name, and that's the important part. And in terms of connotation, we talk in symbols. And so what are symbols? Symbols are composed of 2 points. Names are symbols, but symbols have 2 points. First point is they give you information, but even more importantly, they give you a feeling. And so if you're a political candidate who's really viable, when people see your name, they attach a feeling to it. And if that's happening, if you can measure that, and that's what we measure, is the affect of feelings toward the person's name, not necessarily the person's name alone. Then you can tell if the person is going to do well or not.
Doc, this whole conversation has helped me to not validate, but to explain the math in my own head on why I think, because my thinking on who is going to end up prevailing in the November election is very different from what other people are thinking, and what you told me tonight helps me to explain it to myself, because I'm not going to explain it to other people. I'm going to keep it to myself. But I get a sense that there is a candidate that fits what you're saying. So I'm going to ask you this question because I love the answer that you always give to this question is, Doc, who's going to win the election in November for governor?
Well, absolutely whoever gets the most votes. But there's a caveat now. There's a caveat now.
Okay.
I mention.
Okay. What is
So
it?
in November, the general election, the candidate team for governor who's going to win is going to get the most votes.
Okay.
Unless there's a runoff election.
Oh, what's going on, Doc?
So if neither candidate has 50% plus one.
Yeah.
So let's say we have the two teams, and there is a something that disrupts the angles on that, and it lowers both of those numbers below 50% plus one, then there's a runoff.
Interesting.
And so even if one candidate has more votes than the other, and what I mean by that is I'm not talking about blank ballots. It has to be like a write-in effort. And that's actually what Uggan was trying to do in the 2018 election, I believe, is he was trying to get sufficient votes to lower both Ray and Lou's number below 50% plus one to then compel a runoff.
Yes, I remember. Yeah.
And so that can always happen. That's why I've added that caveat, is you can have like a spoiler come in and a kind of sour, and I wish we had a sour grapes law here too, by the way, but that's a discussion for another day.
Doc,
It's always a pleasure
we opened a studio, and I would love to have you over on a weekly basis to be chatting about this stuff, especially through the general election season.
I love the investigative work you do. You're a genuine journalist, Troy, and Johnny is such a wonderful producer for you, and an absolute balancing effect. I think that that everything you're doing over there is exactly what Guam needs in terms of media.
Thank you.
And absolutely, and I have to say, nothing makes professors prouder than seeing their students do well. And Troy, you're my student. I'm so very proud of you.
Thank you, Doc. I appreciate you.
All right, man.
God bless you, and you have a good night.
Absolutely, and God bless the people of Guam, and God bless America.
God bless America.
Thank you.
That was Dr. Ron McNinch with his advice. And I'm telling you guys, if you are in one of the two gubernatorial campaigns, if you're in one of the congressional campaigns, actually, and he gave some advice that was valuable to senatorial candidates as well. But I think this was mostly for the gubernatorial and congressional candidates. Watch this show again and again and again to understand what it was that he was saying, because he gave you advice on how to win the election. And probably the most concrete, because a lot of times Doc, he doesn't say it directly or exactly. You have to really pay attention to what it is that he's conveying. But the most direct thing he said tonight was about how a gubernatorial candidate can prevail, and it's the one that does more of the talking. The one simple as this. What I keep hearing from voters is they want to know some detail. They'd like to know, you're saying you're going to build the new hospital. Okay. How? Where are you going to build it? If that's the location, how are you going to get to that location? How are you going to convince the legislature that that's the location that it should be in? How much is it going to cost? What's the ballpark? How are you going to get it done? What's your plan to get it done? People want to know those details. In furtherance of that, Kandit, over the general election season, will be having a series of debates, as in, we will be inviting the gubernatorial candidates. I'm not sure about the lieutenant governor candidates. I know for sure the governor candidates to sit across from the table with us as the moderators in our studio to debate issues at a time. For example, the issue of corruption will be its own debate. The issue of affordability and poverty, its own debate, so that conversation can continue. Discussion can happen to the point where the voters are able to extract whether the gubernatorial candidates have actual plans to address these issues that are important to our audience. For Kandit News, I'm Troy Torres. I want to thank you so much for joining me tonight. God bless you, and you all have a beautiful day. Join me tomorrow for the morning show at 7 a.m.
Half a day. You all know me. I've been your senator, former speaker, businesswoman, lawyer, educator, and I am a mother. And I've spent my working life fighting for truth and justice for the people of Guam. As your governor, I will continue to fight for your families, and I will deliver a government that you can trust. This is a critical time for Guam, and we need change now. Our families are struggling and cannot wait. Please vote for us this election to bring that change that Guam needs.
I'm Therese Terlahi.
And I'm Sabina Perez, and we approve this message.
My parents, Ben Diaz and Teresita Bora Ada, founded Ada's Mortuary more than 50 years ago. They built a legacy of service, compassion, and respect. As one of 10 children, I watched them care for families during the hardest moments of their lives. They taught us that the people we served were never just customers. They were grieving families who needed someone to listen, care, and help them through one of life's hardest moments. My father carried those values into public service as a senator. He taught me that whether you are helping one family or serving an entire island, leadership begins with compassion. Those lessons have guided my life and public service. If I'm given the privilege to serve as your governor, they will continue to guide every decision I make. I humbly ask for your vote. I'm Tony Ada, and I approve this message.